Okay, so what makes a sovereign cloud? Quite simply, if you imagine a cloud in your national boundary, and that cloud being owned and operated by a national company within your country. This basically means that the ownership of the cloud is clearly aligned to that cloud provider. So the cloud provider is owning the cloud in its totality. And really that means also if they have cross-border other data centers, sovereign cloud needs to be contained within a region. And that becomes a challenge when you've got multi-region customers. So considering sovereign cloud in those environments becomes a lot more complicated. But particularly, having a national provider who isn't susceptible to things like Cloud Act, things like foreign authority over your data and their ability to empower jurisdictional control of your data, and keep the data resident. That's a key aspect. Obviously, if your cloud provider is in your country, the data centers are in your country, the data needs to be resident in your country. And here again, when you look at hyperscale providers, it's very difficult to understand where your data is in the data center. It's very difficult to understand, from the cloud provider themselves, what their DR rules are, for example. Will your data suddenly appear in a different country because the data center fell over? Those are things that your national cloud provider can tell you, whereas getting that information from a hyperscale provider is different and often very difficult. Owning and operating the cloud needs to be done by sovereign citizens. And depending on the type of data you're maintaining, you would need to have citizens that are maybe security cleared, for example. Again, this is really important to ask your cloud operator, where is their support? If it's 24/7 support, you often find that the actual support unit and support function may be outside of that territory. This means they have access to your data outside your territory, and it means they're subject to separate jurisdictional control. So also remember that when we're talking about data, we're talking about data about data, metadata. So think about your support information, your IP addresses, your naming conventions. All these type of things can lead to challenges when you look at sovereignty. And of course, operating in your region, the cloud's got to comply with your local laws, your security standards, and often every region will have different types of standards there. And we're seeing an interesting problem at the moment, particularly in the EU. We're labeling it as protectionism, and this is where specific countries are starting to build their own clouds with their own sets of local laws and security standards.